Good morning, welcome back to the channel and happy Christmas. It transpires today is Boxing Day. It's drier than it's been for several weeks around here, and as a result I thought, let's get out, let's go and take some pictures. Normally I'm not afraid of going out in the wet, but vlogging in the wet can be a bit of an issue because the vlogging camera is not waterproof. However, my Sony is. But I'm out in the woods again today, and what I'm hoping to find is I'm looking for pattern and texture, and I'm hoping to sort of get some quite nice interesting images. I don't know whether I will, won't know until we find something to take a photograph of, but I've limited myself again, and I've come out with quite a limited arrangement. I've just got the vlogging camera, consequently where you are, and I've got the 100mm manual macro lens that I rant on about being really quite a good little lens. I've got that one with me, and the A7R4 and the tiny Peak tripods, or Peak Designs tripod, not Peak Tripod Designs, and I'm going to see what we can get in the woods in the way of pattern and texture. It's been a couple of weeks since I put a video out, which is unusual for me, but it's been necessary because I got some ransomware on my PC, and I've had to rebuild my PC and reorganize how and what I do with my images to ensure I don't run the risk of losing them. As it happened, I didn't lose my images because I keep a lot, well if not all of them, mirrored onto an external RAID disk, which I only plug in and use once every 2 or 3 weeks. And the idea of doing it once or 2 or 3 times a month, something like that, is that I'm in complete control of that process. I don't expose the RAID disk to the files on my main computer's file system until the computer's offline from the internet, and I've done a full scan to ensure there's nothing untoward that's going to be copied onto the RAID. So it was actually the RAID disk that pretty much saved my bacon recently, but I've spent quite a bit of time reorganizing my files and various things, which has meant not as much time for vlogging as I'd hoped. Anyway, let's get on, see what we can find here today. It's midday, it's a grey sky, so the lighting's quite flat, which probably will be good for what I want to do. No harsh shadows. So let's get on with it and see what we find. I've got the camera mounted on the tripod, as you can see here, and it's quite steady. If I touch the tripod you can see the image wobbling, but if you notice I've zoomed in by a factor of 10, got manual focus set up, and if you look very carefully you can see that that image is, I don't know if you can see it, notice that very slight movement, it's oscillating backwards and forwards. I thought that was the steady shot operating, so I turned steady shot off, and this is a manual lens, it doesn't have any image stabilization in it at all, and zoom in factor of 10 again, and it's still doing it. And I've got a 0.8 of a second exposure there, and I don't think that's going to work very well. But it's 5.9 times magnification. If I go in 11.9, you can see quite noticeably it's oscillating around the place, which is not supposed to be. Don't know what's going on here. Might power the camera down completely and see if it makes any difference. So let's whip the battery out. Yeah, battery out. Back in. It's not the tripod doing that, before anyone says it's wind and tripod. No, it's much more basic than that. It's still doing it. It's as if it's hunting for something. Perhaps the camera's got to go in for a service. But it ain't supposed to do that. So if I take a picture, and that with a 2-second timer, looks like a nice picture. When we get it into playback and zoom in, I would imagine at 0.8 of a second exposure, that's not actually going to be particularly clear. That's very bizarre. It is. I wonder why it's doing that. Anyway, I'll just explain that picture I've taken, which I thought I hadn't taken very well. In front of me, and only a few inches from the front of the camera, there's a little section of bark, and that bark's got water on it, little droplets of water, whereas the rest of it's completely dry. And I'm just fascinated by the pattern of the water droplets, which can be seen in the overall image. I think that's quite a nice image, some nice colour in it. It's got interest here and texture in all of the little bubbles of water, or droplets. So that's the first shot in the bag. Move on to the next one. Well, my next shot is actually of a piece of fungus on the edge of this tree. It's not a stunning image, but it's an interesting image to take. I'll spin you around, you can have a look. There we go. And the image in question is of this piece of fungi on the edge of this birch tree, and some nice detail in that. And on the back of the camera, I've got an incredible depth of field issue here, because the front to back distance of that piece of fungi is about 3.5–4 inches to where it attaches to the tree from this sort of leading edge here. And my depth of field is, even at f16, I'm at f18 at the moment, is very, very, very small. As you can see there, if you can see the highlights, I only need to move the focus point slightly and the highlights move further towards the back of the image. And I've had to take about 7 shots of that, starting with the front edge focus. So what I did was I obviously put the focus point on the front edge, which has got quite a lot of detail in it, and got that perfectly in focus like so. And you can see the amount of movement, the slight amount of wind just moving things around a little bit. We're a 1/6 of a second here. Let me take it down to f22 to see if that improves things. That's a 1/6 of a second at f22. We seem to be a little bit on the dark side, but I can pull back the shadows later in post-processing. Now that's far too dark, so I'm going to have to open things up quite a bit here. Put a bit of +1 exposure compensation on. Let's just check the focus on that again, on that front edge. That seems to be nicely focused, so I'll get that shot, and then I'll continue on and make the focus stack from the rest of the images. So you'll see the image, it'll pop up in a moment. Well, they say never go over the same ground twice, but this time I'm having to, or at least not having to, I'm choosing to. A few weeks ago I came up here, exactly the same spot I'm in now, and I had the 100-400 lens with me, and I found I couldn't get any closer than I needed, or further away, because of this bush just here. And someone wrote in, her name will appear below, and said, well, you can always actually make a panorama even with a 100mm lens, which, to be honest, I've known about and have done in the past, but I didn't think to do it at the time. Now, we haven't got the same beautiful misty conditions that we had the other day, but what we do have is the same beautiful trees. So what I've done is I've set up and I've actually taken a series of 9 shots in 3 layers of this image, which is just behind us here, which is this beautiful sort of little track leading into the picture, and then we've got these silver birch going off into the distance. Now obviously I don't have the benefit of the beautiful mist that we had the other day, causing that sort of distance effect of the mist, the trees disappearing into the mist, but I still have got a nice shot here. So I'm going to stitch those together and I'll put them up in a moment. I'm just framing up for one very tight shot, which I'll show you here. Now the shot I'm framing up for now is just this one, and it's not going to be a panorama, this one. This is just this image. And I like the way this tree's framing the left hand side, and these are coming in from the left and framing the picture. And the little track running through is disappearing through this sort of arch formed by these two trees. I think that's quite a nice image. So let's check focus, because this is a manual lens and that isn't completely focused. So focus peaking I find really is helpful. I've got nice little red highlights appearing on the bark on the tree, and if I zoom in even further it's really crisp. So, and all of the red peaking is showing me that picture's pretty much in focus across the whole scene. So I accept I'm at f16. I accept that in the backgrounds for those trees probably aren't as in focus as the ones in the foreground, but I don't mind that. So I'm going to take that shot, 2-second timer. Well, you catch me now with my back against this tree. You can see just over my left shoulder. I can't get any further back than this. I'm having to employ that technique again, because what I'm trying to frame up is perfectly framed from where I am. So the other side of the tree will be in the way, so I can't move to the other side of the tree, and I can't get the framing I want. So I'll spin you around and explain the framing and why I've done it. So what I'm liking here is this old oak tree, gnarly old oak tree to the left of the silver birch, which is creeping up through the middle of the frame nearer to us, and then the one old oak tree on the other side, I believe it's an oak tree there, not this big one, I don't want that one in the frame, but there. And this positioning doesn't allow me to do it, so what I'm having to do is get this part of the shot first. So 2-second timer, 1/10 of a second. There's a bit of wind, but I don't mind if the leaves have moved. Now I've positioned myself here because if I move slightly to the side, if you look very carefully by the side of the silver birch, there's a dead bit of branch coming down which distracts from the picture, and exactly where I am now it's disappeared. And if I go any further that way, it starts to reappear in the frame. And I don't want that in the frame. It's not part of the image that I want to create. I'm trying to obscure that, and I'm using the silver birch in the foreground to do it. And this is the only position I can get to. So what I need to do is I need to very carefully turn the camera around. I don't have a pan head on, so I'll just manually twist that. Same framing, or at least I'm framing this tree on the right hand side now. 2-second timer. I haven't changed the focus point, so everything should be in focus. Everything's looking red and nice, and that is the image I want. I've done it with a vertical orientation rather than horizontal, in other words a portrait. And the reason I've done it as a portrait orientation is that I like the verticality of the trees. I don't want to introduce too much information on either side of the trees, because I think, if I spin you around and show you why, if I do a horizontal format, I'll end up with these trees over here and this large tree here, which I don't want those in the frame. I just want the three characters to be the gnarly oak there, the silver birch in the foreground, and the old oak on the other side of the little track running through the middle. And I think pretty much that is what I've got. And I'll stitch those together in post and I'll put them up and see what you think. I think it's quite a nice shot. I don't mind the fact the wind's blowing the branches. At low level they're solid branches, so it doesn't matter. Higher up I haven't got in the frame, and also the branches that have still got leaves on. If they're blurred, does it really matter? I don't need them to be pin sharp. Anyway, let's stitch them together and see what we get.